Welcome to the deep dive. Ready for an adventure?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're going to dive deep into medieval philosophy.
Ooh, exciting.
It's going to be anything but boring, I promise. We've got an awesome source to work with.
Okay.
It's a chapter from medieval philosophy, from Alfarabi to Occam, by Andres Martinez Lorca.
Sounds intriguing.
And we're going to use it to, uncover some surprising truths about this era.
I'm all ears.
Ready to bust some myths about the Dark Ages.
Oh, absolutely. That term, it's fascinating how it's stuck around.
Right.
Reducing such a complex period to like a simplistic label.
Yeah.
Martinez Lorca, he challenges that notion right from the start.
So what's his main argument? Like, how does he actually debunk this idea of, intellectual stagnation during the Middle Ages?
Well, he argues that the Middle Ages were far from intellectually uniform.
Okay.
Instead, they were a hotbed of debate and critical thinking, often challenging authority in ways that might surprise you.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
Yeah.
What kind of evidence are we talking about here?
He pulls out some really striking quotes
Okay.
from various medieval thinkers, quotes that really challenge conventional wisdom and reveal just how diverse and daring these minds really were.
Give me an example.
Okay, so William of Occam,
Okay.
a Franciscan friar,
Right.
he directly challenged the Pope's authority, even calling him often the most criminal of men.
Whoa, that's a bold statement.
Right.
Especially for, someone living in the 14th century. It definitely doesn't fit the image of monks just passively copying manuscripts.
Exactly. And it goes beyond Occam.
Okay.
Juan Ruiz, the archpriest of Llostet, he wrote about the corrupting power of money, even suggesting that it could buy your way into paradise.
Really?
Clearly, there was a lot of skepticism and questioning of, traditional religious ideas going on.
So it wasn't just like blind faith and obedience.
Right.
These thinkers were grappling with complex ethical and social issues as well.
Absolutely. We see this in Thomas Aquinas' work, too.
Oh, okay.
Where he discusses the idea of tyrannicide.
Tyrannicide.
Yeah, the killing of a tyrant.
Okay.
And suggests that it can sometimes be justified.
Hold on. Thomas Aquinas, the author of Summa Theologica.
The one and
The pillar of Catholic thought. He was open to the idea of justifiable tyrannicide.
It might seem surprising, yeah, but it shows the nuance and complexity of his thought.
Yeah.
He was engaging with the political realities of his time.
Right.
And exploring those boundaries of moral philosophy.
This is blowing my mind.
Right.
We've got a Pope-challenging friar, a skeptical archpriest, and a theologian pondering justifiable tyrannicide.
It's just the beginning.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
Just the tip. And these diverse voices, they also touch on the very nature of power.
Oh, interesting.
Like Dante Alighieri, for example.
Oh, okay.
He argued that political power comes from God.
Right.
While William of Occam, he countered that it originates from the people.
So we've got some differing opinions here.
Definitely. And these are ideas, by the way, that continue to be debated to this day.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Wow, so these weren't just like abstract philosophical discussions happening in isolation. They were reflecting and influencing the political and social dynamics of the time.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder what other hidden complexities we might be missing,
Yeah.
when we view history through these simplistic labels.
Exactly. And that's where Martinez Lorca's emphasis on the forgotten contributions, he calls them, of Islamic Iberia or Al-Andalus becomes really crucial.
Al-Andalus. I've always been fascinated by this period.
Me too.
It was like a melting pot of cultures and ideas. Right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And often overlooked in our typical understanding of medieval history.
Yeah, for sure.
Martinez Lorca, he highlights that Al-Andalus was this place where science and art and philosophy flourished under Muslim rule.
Okay.
A far cry from a cultural backwater,
Yeah. So what were some of the key contributions that emerged from Al-Andalus?
Well, thinkers like Averroes, whose commentaries on Aristotle would later have a huge impact on Western thought, were products of this vibrant intellectual environment.
Right.
This is where we find works like The Ring of the Dove by Ibn Hazm of Cordoba,
Okay.
an erotic treatise, no less,
Whoa. Okay.
alongside the architectural wonders of the Mesquita in Cordoba and the Alhambra in Granada.
It's incredible to think about the diversity of intellectual and artistic output
Right.
coming from this one region.
Yeah.
It really challenges our preconceived notions about about medieval culture.
Absolutely. And the influence of Al-Andalus, it went far beyond its borders.
Okay.
Martinez Lorca argues that it played a vital role in, preserving and advancing Greek knowledge during the early Middle Ages, acting as like a bridge to the later flourishing of European thought.
So are we saying that without Al-Andalus, the Renaissance as we know it might have never happened?
It's impossible to say for certain, of course, but it's clear that the transmission of knowledge from the Islamic world to Europe, it was a pivotal event.
Okay. And Al-Andalus was a major player in that exchange.
Okay, so we've got this flourishing intellectual center in Al-Andalus, but how does that knowledge actually make its way to Europe?
Right.
Was there like a giant medieval book club going on?
Right. Not exactly.
Okay.
It was a complex process that involved dedicated individuals who took on this monumental task of translating Greek texts, especially those of Aristotle from Arabic into Latin.
So it was the translators who were the real heroes of this intellectual revolution.
They played a crucial role, for sure. Figures like Adelard of Bath, who brought Euclid's Elements to the West, and Hermann the German, who translated Averroes' commentaries on Aristotle. They opened up these new worlds of knowledge for European scholars, and these translations, they fueled a philosophical revival in the 12th and 13th centuries.
A period we call the Aristotelian Renaissance.
Aristotelian Renaissance. That sounds intriguing. Was it all about Aristotle, or were other Greek thinkers being rediscovered as well?
Well, Aristotle was definitely the star of the show.
Okay.
But his rediscovery led to this renewed interest in other Greek thinkers, like Plato and Galen.
Right.
It's like a reawakening of classical thought that had this profound impact on medieval universities.
And this Aristotelian Renaissance laid the groundwork for scholasticism.
Exactly.
I remember that term from my my philosophy classes, but could you give us a refresher on what it actually means?
Sure. Scholasticism, it was a method of learning and inquiry that emphasized rigorous logical analysis, debate, and the reconciliation of faith and reason.
Right.
It was the dominant intellectual tradition in medieval universities.
Right.
And it was heavily influenced by Aristotle's emphasis on logic and systematic thinking.
So the Aristotelian Renaissance was like setting the stage, and then scholasticism took those tools and ideas and kind of ran with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this takes us right into the heart of Islamic and Jewish philosophy.
Okay.
Where figures like Al-Farabi, Averroes, and Maimonides were wrestling with these very ideas, faith, reason, logic, centuries before Aquinas and the Scholastics.
This is so exciting. We're moving from busting myths about the Dark Ages to uncovering this vibrant philosophical renaissance.
I know.
I can't wait to meet these thinkers.
You too.
Let's start with Al-Farabi. Tell me everything.
Al-Farabi. Okay, so he was a 10th century philosopher from what is now Uzbekistan.
Okay.
And he was such a giant in Islamic philosophy that he earned the title the Second Master.
Second to Aristotle, I'm assuming.
You got it. And it wasn't just his intellectual brilliance that set him apart.
Okay.
There's this great anecdote about his life at court. He chose to live very simply.
Oh, wow.
Dedicating himself to knowledge over material wealth.
I admire that. A true scholar. What were some of the groundbreaking ideas he was known for?
Well, for one, his systematic approach to logic.
Okay.
Remember how we were talking about Aristotle's rediscovery bringing logic to the forefront?
Yeah.
Al-Farabi, he built on that foundation. And the impact of his work was undeniable.
Yeah.
In fact, the scholar said Al-Andalusi, he praised Al-Farabi's contributions, stating that his works on logic were the best that there is and the most perfect that exists.
High praise indeed. What else did he contribute?
He also developed the concept of the virtuous city.
Okay.
It was a model for an ideal Islamic society. And this wasn't just about laws and governance.
Okay.
It was about cultivating virtue and knowledge and living in harmony with both the natural world and the divine.
It sounds a bit like Plato's Republic, but with an Islamic twist.
You're picking up on those cross-cultural connections. Al-Farabi was deeply influenced by the Greeks.
Yeah.
But he also adapted those ideas, to fit within an Islamic framework.
And that's where it gets really interesting how these thinkers were weaving together different philosophical traditions.
Exactly.
Now I'm even more curious about Averroes. He was born in Al-Andalus, right?
That's right. He was born in 12th century Cordoba.
Okay.
And he's considered the culmination of philosophical thought in Al-Andalus. But interestingly, he actually had a greater impact on Christian Europe than on the Islamic East.
Why is that? Did his ideas not resonate with Islamic scholars?
Well, it was partly due to historical context.
Oh.
The decline of Al-Andalus and the rise of European universities meant that his works, particularly his commentaries on Aristotle, they found a more receptive audience in the West.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but Averroes himself, he was a dedicated scholar, much like Al-Farabi. The story goes that he only ever stopped studying for 2 nights in his life.
2 nights?
His wedding night.
Okay.
And the night his father died.
Wow, that's dedication. I can barely make it through a chapter without checking my phone.
Right. And remember, Averroes wasn't just a philosopher.
Okay.
He was also a judge.
Oh, wow.
A physician and a royal advisor.
That's impressive.
Yet he still managed to produce this vast body of work, including commentaries on Aristotle, Plato, and Galen, as well as original treatises on law, medicine, and this is key, the reconciliation of faith and reason.
He sounds like a true Renaissance man, centuries before the Renaissance. It's amazing how these individuals were able to excel in so many different fields.
He certainly embodied that spirit of intellectual curiosity, and a multidisciplinary approach to knowledge. But what really made Averroes stand out was his return to what he considered a more authentic interpretation of Aristotle, stripping away centuries of Neoplatonic influence.
Neoplatonism, could you explain that a little further? What was he trying to get back to in Aristotle's thought?
Sure. So Neoplatonism, it was a philosophical school that emerged centuries after Aristotle.
Okay.
It blended his ideas with elements of Plato's philosophy and mystical interpretations.
Okay.
And Averroes believed that these later interpretations, they had distorted Aristotle's original teachings.
Okay.
Adding spiritual elements that weren't there.
Right.
He wanted to get back to that core of Aristotle's philosophy, logic, observation, and a focus on the natural world.
So it was a call for a more grounded, rational approach to philosophy.
Yes.
Less focused on the mystical.
Exactly. And he argued that a scientific investigation is only complete when both sides have been examined, emphasizing the importance of looking at all sides of an argument, which was a pretty radical idea at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
And one that foreshadowed the scientific spirit of the Renaissance and the Enlightenment.
Now I'm starting to see why he had such an impact on Western thought.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about the tension between faith and reason
that
you mentioned earlier. How did Averroes, as a Muslim scholar, navigate that relationship?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
And where Averroes' legacy becomes complex and controversial. Yeah. His emphasis on reason, and his interpretation of Aristotle, they led to accusations of heresy from some within the Islamic world.
Oh, wow.
But it was his theory of the intellect, which suggested a universal intellect shared by all humanity that really stirred things up.
A universal intellect. That sounds pretty radical, especially in a religious context.
It was a bold idea, definitely. Yeah. That challenged conventional understandings of individual souls and the afterlife.
Right.
And it also sparked intense debate in the Christian world.
Okay.
Where his works were eagerly studied and debated by theologians and philosophers.
So it's amazing how these ideas were crossing cultural and religious boundaries, sparking debates and shaping the intellectual landscape of both the Islamic and Christian worlds.
Exactly. And these conversations, keep in mind, were happening centuries before what we traditionally consider the Age of Reason.
That's a good point.
It's a reminder that the history of ideas is full of surprises and unexpected connections.
And speaking of unexpected connections, let's move on to Maimonides, our Jewish philosopher from Al-Andalus.
Yes.
I'm really curious to hear about his perspective on all of this.
Maimonides is another fascinating figure.
Okay.
He was born in 1135 in Cordoba, just like Averroes.
Okay.
And his life was deeply intertwined with the political and religious upheavals of the time.
Right.
And just like Al-Farabi and Averroes, he grapples with the relationship between faith and reason. But he brought a unique Jewish perspective to the table.
So how did he approach that tension? Was he more aligned with Averroes' focus on reason, or did he take a different path?
Well, Maimonides engaged deeply with Aristotle, just like the others.
Okay.
But he approached those ideas through the lens of his Jewish faith. He wasn't simply accepting Aristotle wholesale.
Right.
He was critically evaluating his arguments and reinterpreting them in light of Jewish tradition.
So a more selective approach.
Yeah.
Taking what resonated and leaving the rest behind.
Exactly. For example, he rejected Aristotle's theory of the eternity of the world, arguing instead for creation by God. But he embraced the idea of a prime mover, seeing it as compatible with the Jewish understanding of God.
Right.
He even stated his agreement with Aristotle on this point in his major work,
which is
Guide for the Perplexed.
Guide for the Perplexed. What an intriguing title. What was the core message of this work? Who was he writing for?
He was writing for those struggling to reconcile their intellectual understanding of the world with their religious beliefs. He acknowledged the apparent contradictions between philosophy and scripture, but argued that these could be resolved through careful interpretation. Not by rejecting one or the other.
So he was encouraging a deeper engagement with both faith and reason.
Yes.
Showing how they could actually enhance each other.
Precisely. And a key part of his approach was his method of biblical interpretation. He didn't take the text literally. Instead, he used allegorical interpretation, searching for hidden meanings and philosophical truths beneath the surface of the text.
So he was reading the Bible as a philosophical text, not just a religious one.
Yes.
It's fascinating.
And this approach allowed him to reconcile seemingly contradictory ideas. It's this intellectual dexterity that makes Maimonides such a towering figure in Jewish thought. And what's even more impressive is that he accomplished all of this while serving as a court physician to the Sultan in Egypt. And leading the Jewish community.
Wow, talk about a busy schedule. It's amazing how he balanced his intellectual pursuits with his demanding professional and communal roles.
It's remarkable. He even describes his grueling daily routine in a letter.
Really?
Giving us this glimpse into the very human side of this intellectual giant.
I love that.
Yeah, he writes, "Consequence of all this is that no Jew can speak with me or be alone with me except on the Sabbath. On that day, the whole community, or at least the majority of its members, come to see me after morning prayers. Then I give them instructions for the whole week."
It's inspiring to see how he remained grounded in the everyday concerns of his community, even as he explored these most profound philosophical questions.
Absolutely. And these interconnections, they become even more prominent as we move on to Thomas Aquinas, who attempts to synthesize Aristotle's philosophy with Christian theology in this truly monumental way.
Aquinas, the dumb ox who turned out to be an intellectual powerhouse.
That's it.
I can't wait to delve into his work and see how he tackles this challenge of bringing together these two seemingly disparate systems of thought.
It's quite a feat.
But that will have to wait for part 2 of our medieval adventure.
Stay tuned. We've only just begun to explore the depths of medieval thought. Welcome back to our deep dive into medieval philosophy.
I'm ready to pick up where we left off. Last time we were talking about Al-Farabi and his concept of the virtuous city. What exactly did he envision for an ideal Islamic society?
So for Al-Farabi, the virtuous city was a society where, individuals strive for intellectual and moral perfection, guided by reason and justice. It was a hierarchical structure, with philosophers at the top guiding the rulers, who in turn lead the citizens towards the ultimate goal, knowledge of God.
So it wasn't just about laws and governance, but a way of life that emphasized both individual and collective pursuit of knowledge.
Exactly. It was about cultivating virtue and knowledge.
Right.
And living in harmony with both the natural world and the divine. You could say it was like a blueprint for a society that reflected the interconnectedness of different aspects of human existence.
That makes me think of how we were talking about the interconnectedness of knowledge earlier.
Right.
How thinkers like Averroes were drawing from both philosophy and medicine.
Yeah.
Speaking of Averroes, we touched on his return to an authentic Aristotle.
Yes.
What exactly did he find problematic about the way Aristotle had been interpreted up to that point?
So Averroes believed that later commentators, particularly those influenced by Neoplatonism, they had added these mystical and spiritual elements that distorted Aristotle's original teachings.
So he was advocating for a more grounded, rationalistic approach to philosophy, stripping away those later interpretations to get back to what he saw as the essence of Aristotle's thought.
Precisely. He wanted to return to the core principles of logic, observation, and a focus on the natural world. Okay. He saw those as the foundations for true understanding, not mystical interpretations or spiritual add-ons.
That focus on the natural world and observation makes me think about his work as a physician.
Right.
Did his medical practice influence his philosophical thinking and vice versa? Was there a connection there?
That's a great question. It's clear that his medical practice, which was grounded in observation and empirical evidence, reinforced his emphasis on reason and the importance of the senses in acquiring knowledge.
Okay.
This is evident in his commentaries on Aristotle's De Anima,
right,
where he explores the nature of the soul and the relationship between the body and the mind.
So he was approaching these big philosophical questions with a perspective informed by his hands-on experience as a physician.
Yes, and that hands-on approach extended to his method of inquiry as well. Yeah. He emphasized the importance of studying opposing viewpoints.
Yeah.
Arguing that a true understanding, it requires examining all sides of an argument.
That's a principle that resonates deeply, especially in today's world where it's so easy to get caught in echo chambers and filter bubbles.
Right.
It's a reminder that critical thinking, requires engaging with diverse perspectives, even those we might disagree with.
Exactly. And that brings us to Maimonides.
Okay.
And his groundbreaking approach to reconciling faith and reason. We briefly mentioned his Guide for the Perplexed. But could you elaborate on the core message of this work? Who is he writing for?
It sounds like he was addressing those who are wrestling with, intellectual doubts and trying to find a way to reconcile their faith with their growing understanding of the world.
You're right on target.
Okay.
He acknowledged the apparent contradictions between philosophy and scripture, but he argued that these could be resolved through careful interpretation.
Okay.
He didn't advocate blind faith, but a more nuanced approach that honored both the intellect and religious tradition.
And if I remember correctly, his approach to biblical interpretation played a key role in this reconciliation.
Absolutely. He used allegorical interpretation, looking for hidden meanings and philosophical truths beneath the surface of the text.
Okay.
He believed that Scripture contained deeper layers of meaning that could be unlocked through reason and careful study.
It's like he was reading the Bible through a philosophical lens.
Yes.
Finding new depths and connections that might not be apparent on a literal reading.
Precisely. And this method allowed him to bridge seemingly contradictory ideas.
All right.
For example, he reconciled Aristotle's concept of the prime mover with the Jewish understanding of God as the creator, showing how philosophical ideas could illuminate religious concepts.
It's incredible how these thinkers were drawing from different intellectual traditions, weaving them together into new tapestries of thought.
Yeah,
amazing. It really highlights the interconnectedness of ideas and cultures during this period.
And that interconnectedness sets the stage for Thomas Aquinas, who takes on this monumental task of synthesizing Aristotelian philosophy with Christian theology.
Yes, Aquinas. We talked about his famous works, but what were some of the specific challenges he faced in trying to bring together these two systems of thought? They seem like they could be at odds in certain fundamental ways.
One major challenge was the issue of the eternity of the world.
Okay.
So Aristotle, he believed that the world was eternal,
right? While
Christian doctrine held that the world was created by God at a specific point in time.
So how did Aquinas approach this seemingly irreconcilable difference? Did he side with one view over the other?
He argued that that philosophical reasoning, it might suggest the eternity of the world, but it couldn't definitively prove it.
Right.
And since faith revealed the truth of creation, reason should not contradict it.
So he prioritized faith in this instance, but did that mean reason took a back seat in his system?
Not at all. Aquinas was careful to emphasize that reason still had a vital role in understanding and explaining the world.
Okay.
He believed that both faith and reason were gifts from God and could work in harmony.
So it's about finding that balance, that point where faith and reason could coexist and even complement each other.
Exactly. And Aquinas, he achieved this balance through a hierarchical system where reason could explore the natural world, while faith provided the ultimate framework for understanding God and our place in the universe.
It sounds like he was trying to create this comprehensive system that encompassed both the physical and the metaphysical, the earthly and the divine.
Yes, and his work had this profound impact on Christian thought. His ideas about natural law, reason, and ethics, they laid the groundwork for centuries of theological and philosophical debate.
And it wasn't just within the church that his ideas resonated, right?
Absolutely. His influence, it extended beyond the realm of religion.
Okay.
His writings on natural law and ethics influenced later thinkers in the fields of law and political theory.
It's amazing how these ideas that were developed in a theological context could have such a far-reaching impact.
It speaks to the enduring power of these fundamental questions about how we understand the world, morality, and the nature of existence. And these questions take on an even more dramatic dimension when we consider William of Ockham and his conflict with the Pope.
Ah, yes, William of Ockham, the rebellious friar who dared to challenge the highest authority in the church.
That's him.
What were the key issues that led to this clash? Was it purely theological, or were there other factors at play?
The heart of the conflict was the nature of papal power.
Okay.
Ockham. He argued against the idea of papal supremacy.
Okay.
Both in temporal and spiritual matters, believing that the Pope's authority should be limited.
So he was questioning the very foundation of papal authority. That's a bold move for a Franciscan friar. What were his arguments based on?
He believed that the church should be governed more democratically.
Okay.
And he saw the Pope's claims to absolute power as a corruption of the church's original mission. He advocated for a return to the principles of poverty and humility, which he felt the church had strayed from.
It sounds like he was a reformer at heart, someone who saw the institution he belonged to, straying from its core values.
Right.
What were the consequences of his challenge? Did he face any repercussions for speaking out against the Pope?
Well, his actions were seen as a direct threat to papal authority.
Okay.
And he was summoned to Avignon to answer charges of heresy. Well, he fled Avignon, fearing for his safety,
right,
and sought refuge with the Holy Roman Emperor.
Oh, wow.
Becoming involved in the complex political struggles of the time.
Wow. So these philosophical debates weren't just like academic exercises. They had real world consequences, with Ockham finding himself caught in the midst of a power struggle.
Precisely. His story highlights how deeply intertwined philosophical and political realities were during this period.
Yeah.
And his ideas, they had a lasting impact, influencing later reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin during the Protestant Reformation.
It's fascinating how these threads connect across centuries. So Occam's ideas about individual conscience and limiting the power of the church laid the groundwork for this major religious upheaval centuries later.
Yes. And his ideas about the separation of church and state also had this profound influence on the development of political thought in the West.
It's remarkable how a single individual's ideas can ripple through history, shaping events and movements that unfold long after they're gone.
It speaks to the enduring power of ideas and their ability to inspire change. And Ockham, he wasn't just a radical theologian and political thinker. He also made significant contributions to logic and philosophy.
Okay.
Most notably with his famous principle known as Occam's razor.
Ah, yes, Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is usually the best.
Thanks.
That's one of those ideas that has transcended the realm of philosophy and found its way into everyday language and problem solving.
It's true. It's often used in scientific contexts. Encouraging us to favor simpler explanations over more complex ones.
Right.
But it's rooted in this deeper philosophical idea, a commitment to intellectual humility, clarity, and avoiding unnecessary assumptions.
So even though it's often associated with science and logic, it has its origins in Occam's broader philosophical outlook.
Yes, and that outlook is characterized by this desire for for clarity, a focus on essentials, and a willingness to challenge established authority when it strays from those principles.
Well, it's fascinating how a principle that can guide scientific inquiry can also be applied to moral and political questions. It seems like a thread that runs throughout all of the thinkers we've discussed today.
Yeah.
This drive to question assumptions, to seek truth through both reason and faith, and to create a more just and harmonious world.
That's a great observation. And it's this shared intellectual quest that makes the study of medieval philosophy so rewarding. We're not just uncovering historical facts. We're engaging with timeless questions that continue to resonate today.
I completely agree. It's been an incredible journey so far, moving from shattering the myth of the Dark Ages to uncovering this rich tapestry of medieval thought. But I'm curious to see how these threads continue to weave their way through history. What's the lasting legacy of these medieval thinkers? How did their ideas influence the centuries that followed?
Well, that's exactly what we'll explore in part 3 of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll trace the influence of these thinkers on the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Enlightenment, and beyond.
Ooh, okay.
It's a fascinating story of how ideas take root, spread, and transform the world.
I can't wait to hear more. This deep dive has completely changed my understanding of medieval philosophy and its lasting impact.
It's pretty amazing.
It's a reminder that history is never truly in the past. It's always shaping the present.
Exactly. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll explore how these medieval ideas continue to resonate in the 21st century.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've been on this incredible journey exploring medieval philosophy, and I'm excited to talk about the lasting impact of these thinkers.
It is amazing how their ideas, which were often developed, in specific religious contexts, have transcended those boundaries,
and
continue to resonate like centuries later.
Exactly. Last time we were discussing William of Ockham.
Yes.
And his bold challenge to papal authority.
Right.
It seems like his ideas about limiting the power of the church were pretty radical for the 14th century.
Oh yeah.
Did they have any lasting impact? Did anyone pick up that torch, so to speak?
Absolutely. Ockham's emphasis on individual conscience and challenging the absolute power of the church.
Yeah.
It resonated deeply with later reformers like Martin Luther and John Calvin, who were key figures in the Protestant Reformation.
So he's planting seeds that would eventually blossom into a major religious and social upheaval.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about the long-term impact of his ideas.
It really highlights how these seemingly abstract philosophical debates can have very real and profound consequences.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't just in the realm of religion that Ockham's ideas had an impact. His arguments for the separation of church and state also deeply influenced the development of political thought, in the West.
For sure.
Like we're seeing this direct line from Ockham's 14th century writings to the foundations of modern secular democracies.
Yeah, it's a powerful legacy.
It is.
Yeah.
And it speaks to this broader question of how these medieval thinkers shaped the intellectual landscape of Europe and beyond. Their ideas didn't simply fade into the past, They continued to spark debate, inspire new movements, and influence the course of history.
That's true.
I'm eager to trace those lines of influence.
Okay.
Let's start with Al-Farabi.
Okay.
Did his concept of the virtuous city have any staying power? Did it influence later thinkers and political models?
Well, Al-Farabi's work on political philosophy, especially his ideas about reason, justice, and the ideal society.
Yeah.
They continue to be studied and debated in the Islamic world.
Okay.
And his influence is evident in the works of later political theorists, both in the East and the West, who grappled with similar questions about governance, ethics, and social harmony.
So he's part of this larger ongoing conversation about how we organize ourselves as societies,
right?
And strive for a more just and fulfilling way of life.
Exactly. And that conversation takes on different forms in different cultures and historical periods.
Right.
But the fundamental questions remain remarkably consistent.
That's true.
What is justice? What is the role of government? What does it mean to live a good life? These are questions that humans have been grappling with for centuries.
Timeless questions indeed. And what about Averroes? We talked about how influential his commentaries on Aristotle were in the West.
Yeah.
But did his ideas have any impact on Islamic thought? Did his legacy endure in his own cultural and religious context?
That's a great question, and it's one that reveals some of the complexities of intellectual history.
Okay.
While Averroes' philosophical works were eventually marginalized in the Islamic East, likely due to their perceived challenge to traditional theological interpretations.
Right.
His contributions as a legal scholar and a commentator on Islamic law were undeniable and continue to be studied.
So even though his philosophical ideas faced resistance, his legal expertise left a lasting mark on Islamic thought.
Yes, and what's fascinating is that in recent decades there's been this renewed interest in his philosophical work among Islamic thinkers who are engaging with the challenges of modernity.
Okay.
They're finding new relevance in his ideas about reason, interpretation, and the relationship between faith and philosophy.
It's like history is coming full circle with his ideas finding a new audience and sparking new debates centuries after they were first written.
Right.
It's a reminder that intellectual legacies are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And being reinterpreted in light of new contexts and challenges.
Absolutely. And that brings us to Maimonides.
Okay.
Did his approach to reconciling faith and reason have a lasting impact on Jewish thought?
He was such a groundbreaking figure, finding ways to bridge philosophical inquiry with religious tradition.
I know.
It would be amazing if his ideas continued to influence later generations of Jewish thinkers.
And they did. Maimonides is widely considered one of the most important Jewish philosophers of all time. His work continues to be studied and debated within Jewish intellectual circles, from Orthodox to Reform.
Right.
And his influence can be seen in a wide range of Jewish philosophical and theological traditions.
So he's not just a historical figure, but a living presence in Jewish thought.
Exactly. His writings continue to challenge and inspire, prompting ongoing conversations about the nature of faith, the role of reason, and the interpretation of Scripture within Judaism.
I love how these deep dives reveal these hidden connections, showing how ideas flow through time, influencing generations of thinkers across different cultures and religions. It really expands our understanding of the history of ideas and shows how interconnected they truly are.
It's like tracing the intellectual DNA of human thought.
Yeah.
And it brings us to our final figure, Thomas Aquinas.
Okay.
We talked about his immense contribution to Christian theology.
Right.
But did his ideas have a reach beyond the realm of religion?
He seemed to be grappling with such fundamental questions about reason, ethics, and the nature of existence. It would be incredible if his influence extended beyond the walls of the church.
And it did. Aquinas' impact on Western thought as a whole is undeniable. His ideas about natural law, reason, and ethics, they laid the groundwork for later developments in philosophy, law, and political theory across Europe and beyond.
So he's not just a theologian, but a foundational figure in the Western intellectual tradition.
Precisely. And while his work was initially championed by the Catholic Church, his ideas have resonated with thinkers from a wide range of backgrounds, including secular philosophers and political theorists.
It's amazing how these thinkers who were often working within specific religious frameworks were able to develop ideas that transcended those boundaries and continue to have relevance in our increasingly secular world.
It's a testament to the power of human reason and the enduring search for truth, meaning, and a just society. These are themes that run throughout the history of philosophy, from the ancient Greeks to the medieval world and beyond.
This has been an incredible journey. We've gone from shattering the myth of the Dark Ages to uncovering the rich intellectual tapestry of medieval thought.
I know, it's been so fun.
And we've seen how those ideas continue to resonate in the 21st century. It's a reminder that history is never truly past, you know?
Yeah.
It's always with us, shaping the way we think and the world we live in.
And that's what makes exploring these ideas so rewarding. We're not just learning about the past. We're engaging in this conversation that spans centuries and continues to this day.
That's a great point.
And who knows what new insights and connections we'll uncover along the way.
I'm already looking forward to our next deep dive.
Me too.
But for now, let's leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay.
As we navigate the complexities of our modern world, it's worth remembering the lessons of these medieval thinkers. They remind us to embrace reason, to question authority, to seek justice, and to never stop searching for truth. Even if it means challenging long-held assumptions or venturing beyond our comfort zones.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the world of ideas.
Yes.
The journey is far from over.